Man, these past few months of swimming have been absolutely electric, haven't they? The emergence of several new superstars, the revenge tour of Luka Mijatovic, and mid-season invites proving that the Pro Swim Series is dying were just a taste of what's to come this summer. Yet despite all of the hype, there was one event that took place recently that only generated buzz of the negative variety. The Enhanced Games. Even if you don't follow swimming as a sport, it seemed like this facade dominated the headlines for months at a time. The organizers staged an event where they completely rejected the rules of organized sports. They allowed athletes to use performance-enhancing drugs to challenge the boundaries of human achievement. Unsurprisingly, the premise grew to be near universally reviled by the swimming world. So much so that FINA threw down the ban hammer and barred any participating athletes from ever competing in the sport again. In the lead-up to the event, I was working on a video about it. I had a script ready and lines recorded where I eviscerated the athletes participating while bringing up the obvious dialogue of swimming's financial incentives and what needs to be done to improve them. However, there was one event that changed my plans. Cameron McAvoy breaking the world record in the 50 freestyle. This event wasn't just significant because of the legend surrounding the time standard. Remember that the biggest reason the Enhanced Games got popularized was because of the allure of breaking the 50 freestyle world record. If you recall my video from a few months back, it's a mark I called all but untouchable. Nobody came anywhere close to it in over a decade's worth of attempts. It seemed like 20.9 was the benchmark for human achievement in the event. Maybe you could get under it by wearing the supersuit CL used and juicing to the gills. That's exactly what James Magnuson said he would do for the opportunity. And it was the main reason the event got the amount of press it did, both good and bad. With McAvoy's unbelievable swim, the Enhanced Games lost their smoking gun. Under every training video and article promoting the event, every fan and athlete had the same consensus. Who cares if they're rooting out for a faster time? McAvoy had a much more impressive swim, and he did it legally. But there was still a glimmer of hope for success. The organizers had assembled a pretty sizable roster and expanded the event to include different stroke disciplines. So with all that in mind, the Enhanced Games as a whole were a complete and utter disaster on all counts. An event that promised world records galore and feats rivaling Steve Rogers with the Super Soldier Serum gave us next to nothing on all counts. Do you know how many world records were set over the course of the competition? 1. And that's across every single event in every sport. A track runner named Fred Curley boasted that he demolished Usain Bolt's world record on the 100-meter dash. The time he would end up going would have finished dead last in the Paris Olympics. The men's 100 breaststroke saw nobody get within 4 seconds of the top standard. It got so bad that SwimSwam was busting out national age group records for 12-year-olds to compare to some of the times these athletes were going. And that brings us to the only world record that was broken during the event. Christian Golomev would swim a 20.81 to imagine that he broke the world record in the 50 freestyle, with some asterisks attached. The first one is one that I've already covered. Nobody cared. It pales in comparison to McAvoy's swim. He even trolled the athletes about it on social media. The second is somehow even more hilarious. The time might not even be legitimate. Viewers noticed a big discrepancy between when the clock stopped and when Golomev actually finished. You can make the argument that it happens on swimming live streams and even the biggest competitions, but those kinds of circumstances are few and far between. The fact that it's even a conversation is absolutely pathetic. The organizers promised a raising of the bar and challenging the feats of human achievement. And all they got was one world record that may not have even been accurate. Even then, most of the bigger swims of the competition are things that could be contributed to the supersuits more than anything that they were using. If you're an outsider to the sport of swimming, you might think that this is a shocking development. But to be honest, we could see this coming from a mile away. The first problem was with roster construction. Turns out that most of the world's best athletes are going to balk at a permanent competition ban as a prerequisite for joining the games. Outside of a few outliers, the roster was made up of people who had nothing to lose. Either veterans that were well past their prime or those that never had a shot at being the best to begin with made up the majority of the roster. Which means that most of the top guns will choose fair competition over short-term cash and long-term health risks. Nobody was getting close to top standards with that in mind. So what was advertised as revolutionizing the sport ended up being the equivalent of the kid who tries too hard to be different and isolating himself from everyone in the process. The second problem is that the broadcast suffered from many of the same ailments that plague swimming live streaming today. It seems like the bare minimum is becoming harder and harder to achieve to ensure that fans have access to the sport. The Enhanced Games were no different. It was so bad that they didn't have a clock present until midway through the competition. If you wanted final times, you had to rely on the announcers to get them. The third issue was the venue itself. You have a competition pool that's only 4 lanes long with a water temperature of 80 degrees. Would you really consider that to be a fast pool? Take the controversy surrounding the Paris Olympic pool and amplify it here. Turns out that's what happens when you wait until the last possible minute to start construction. Finally, we get to the coach of this cardiac crew. Brett Hawk, the cockroach of the swimming world. Those in the college swimming ranks, especially at Auburn, don't exactly hold a high opinion of him. He's been more known for controversy in recent times than anything resembling swimmer development. Most notably, him complaining that Pan Zhanlei was doping for his 100 freestyle world record. You make all that fuss just to become the mascot for performance-enhancing drugs? Is there any wonder why there weren't any game-changing performances at this competition? There are really only a few winners from an event like this. The first is Hunter Armstrong. When he came out and confirmed his desires to compete in the enhanced games as a clean athlete, I thought he was out of his mind. Vino wasn't exactly playing nice with those who threw their hats into the ring. Not to mention that Armstrong's been on a bit of a decline in recent times. His backstroke is nowhere near what it was when he emerged onto the scene as the Magic Man. His best value was as a freestyle relay piece, and with the amount of depth emerging, his spot on an international roster wasn't guaranteed. Also note that he was one of the sponsored athletes that got royally screwed over by TYR last year. With Hunter's participation in the games, he was gambling his career on getting a big payout and praying that Fina would play nice with him to allow him to continue swimming. He bet on himself, and right now it seems to be paying off. Hunter demolished the enhanced athletes in the 50 backstroke and secured a nice payout in the process. He also got drug tested by Fina immediately afterwards, which is a good sign for his professional prospects. They may let him fight for a spot on a home Olympic roster after all. Christian Golomev also got a pretty nice payout to support his family with, although he could have carved a few more years on the Greek team if he hadn't thrown his hat in the ring. Those that have participated in the games seem to have gotten what they came for. The monetary earnings were exactly as they described, and many have even expressed desires to return to the games for next year. But is that really even going to happen? In the aftermath of the Enhanced Games disaster, their parent company's stock prices plummeted by over 40%. And that's just in one day. It's still getting worse. With swimming and track and field being financial drains as they are, I don't see this event coming back for another year. Rich people tend to throw out random shit like this as an experiment, then pull out entirely when the going gets tough. Considering recent news, there's a big possibility of this being the case. It doesn't really matter to the older veterans, however. Most of them were just doing it for a quick cash grab and to support their families while they continue their life outside of the water. The real losers are going to be the young guns who threw away their careers for a cheap payday. You hope for their sakes that they actually get the payouts they were promised. Remember the ISL debacle from a few years ago? There are some athletes that are still waiting on their payments. They're hoping that won't be the case for them. And with all that, one of the most embarrassing chapters in swimming's recent memory has finally come to a close. And the worst part of it all is that we still don't have the answers we need about how to market the sport to a bigger national audience. Although the winds of change could be coming on that front, though. Social media accounts regarding swimmers are starting to become more and more popular. We've even seen some swimmers make the move to Twitch to stream on the side. Moves like this are going to be vital for growing the sport moving forward. But considering the president of the IOC's recent comments on paying athletes, it might not happen right away.